What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current. Got an exciting guest on here tonight, and we're going to talk about mainly dock fishing, like targeting redfish, flounder, trout on docks with a heavy focus on redfish. But we're going to also talk a lot about just fishing inshore structure, what that means, what we look for as inshore structure, and a lot of that being man-made structure and how to fish that correctly, what kind of bait to use, how to approach it, how to set up on a dock, how to set up on a piece of structure. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, stay tuned for sure. Before we get into that, I want to let y'all know this show is sponsored by First Class Glass, which is a boat fiberglass company here in Wilmington. They do a lot of warranty work for different companies around town, different boat manufacturers or boat dealerships around town. Do an incredible job of any type of fiberglass work you need done. Full restoration of old boats, redoing motors to make them look brand new again, a little ding, nick repair, putting new floor. Anything fiberglass or painting or anything like that you need done to your boat here in the Wilmington area, even the North Carolina area, check out First Class Glass. I'll have them linked in the show notes, the description, all that stuff on podcast platforms on YouTube. So definitely check them out. Also, if you have any questions about them, feel free to hit me up. They also have an Instagram. It's First Class Glass. I think there's a Facebook, First Class Glass. So check that out. Also, go check out Eastern Current Fishing on Facebook. Great place to connect with other listeners, like-minded listeners, and ask questions, meet some fishing buddies, and hopefully we're just trying to build a community of anglers over there. That's really the only reason for our Facebook is for people to kind of get to know each other. Check us out on Instagram, Eastern Current. Check me out on Instagram, Jud Brock Fishing. If you're interested in booking fishing trips or anything like that, through Jud Brock Fishing or through our website, it's the best way to do that. And I think that's all the crap I got to talk about here at the beginning. Not that all that's crap, but definitely not First Class Glass. First Class Glass is legit. All my stuff's crap. But I'm going to bring on our guest to talk about dock fishing, and his name is, let me see, get this screen ready, Pierre. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Oh, nothing much, man. Thank you so much. I was talking to Pierre pre-show. We were talking about doing the podcast last night. Had my father-in-law's birthday, fell asleep on the couch, woke up, got home, and just completely blanked on doing it. So thankfully, as usual, the guest is very flexible with my crazy, unorganized life. So, but excited to have you on here, man. And I think this is a topic that will really resonate for a lot of people. Because, sometimes dock fishing, it sounds simple, but it's not. I mean, you've got to know where to be, where the fish are on that tide. Like, there's a lot of docks, and like knowing which dock to pick and which piece of structure to pick and when they're going to be there and how to fish it. There's a lot to that, just like any type of fishing, you can definitely elevate your game by focusing on key points and tactics. And so excited to have you on. I know you wreak havoc on a lot of the dock fish around this area. So
I'm a dock banger, man. That's my MO. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. I think there's definitely a little stigma that goes with it, but I think it's something that a lot of people can take advantage of, and I think it's just something that there's definitely an art to it. I mean, just like anything else you do, there's a way to do it.
Definitely.
I think we can cover that. So
I think one of the really cool things about fishing big pieces of structure like that, docks in general, is there's not a lot of days you can't go do it. You can usually almost always go out there and pull something off, and that there's something for to be said about that as far as fishing goes, because you can get blown out and weathered out a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you got options. If you got a west wind, you just got to position yourself out of that wind, and it's something you can do easily. You just got to know where your docks are that are holding fish or might be holding fish, and but yeah, you got plenty of options as far as getting out of the weather to do this kind of fishing for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's year round. It is year round.
Before we get too into the meat of this, just tell people a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got into fishing, and how you became a dock banger.
Yeah, sure, man. I'm so like you said, my name is Pierre again. I'm actually I moved down here, and I'm a transplant. I moved down here in 2012 when I came down here to finish up school, and but grew up spending my summers down at the Fort Fisher, and being a pier rat down there at Curry Beach, and fishing in the marsh back there, and just having a good time as a kid. Made it on a few boats up in Surf City, including Surf City Charters, and then got into a little bit of tournament fishing around here with the local tournaments with my buddy Kevin, and just kind of from there decided one day that in addition to teaching, which is my main gig, I decided that that maybe doing some charters in the summer would be a good thing. So
Heck
I'm just a
yeah.
little part-time guy and just enjoying what I'm doing, man.
Definitely, man. I think that's awesome. And that's one of the best parts about the teaching schedule, man, is like it gives you that opportunity to like in the summer you can kind of pursue your passion. And I mean, not that teaching might not be your passion, but you have that time to do something that you enjoy in life, and you're doing something really cool by teaching, and then also being able to fish and share those times with people. I mean, I tell anyone that wants to get into guiding, dude, I mean, and maybe it'll hurt me one day, but I'm like, if you want to do it and you don't like what you're doing or you think you'd love guiding, try it, because it's a great job. I love doing it. And it's just life's too short to wait and not do something that you're passionate about. So man, I'm stoked for you on that. And
appreciate that, man.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just it's a good job, and as you know, it's fun to just share those times in the water with people.
Absolutely.
So that's super cool, man. I love hearing people's story and kind of getting their background a little bit.
Yep.
But yeah, so let's dive into dock fishing. So obviously there's thousands and thousands of docks from Carolina Beach to North Topsail. How do you pick a dock? Let's go through that process of. And obviously, the easy answer is you pick the dock with redfish on it. But how do we find that dock?
Yeah. I tell you what. I've learned this from a lot of old timers and just kind of listening, from a kid to now, and just I look for I guess the simple answer would be, if I'm just riding down the waterway, the first thing I'm gonna look for is the oldest dock I can find.
Yeah.
And that's just usually one of my number one cues. It's I look for growth on the dock. Do they got a cutting board hanging out there? Do they got crab pots? Anything that revolves around fishing. If I see that on a dock and I see that it's old and janky looking, I will capitalize. I'll at least pitch a bait up under there and see what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that I've noticed as well. Is not that I'm great at my best way of finding a dock is seeing someone else bent over when I run down the waterway and they're sitting there on the dock. But no,
you're one of those guys.
I'm one of the dude.
I'm
gonna take whatever I can get. That's how I work.
You got to.
But
you got to.
But it always seems to be, and I have found fish on docks, and there, as you know, there's community docks and historical redfish docks and whatnot. But they're always old. You're never. I can't tell you one dock that I've caught that's not kind of gnarly and old pilings and whatnot. I'm sure they get under them, but like you said, more habitat, and a lot of times in a creek too, the spot where the fish kind of lay up or hang out, it has more structure. It's got more oysters, more grass, flooded. There's more to it. It's more dynamic of a spot with that going on. Is there anything in specific that you see with wood or concrete or bulkhead? Are there any key pieces of structure that may trigger? And we're going to get deep into this. We're going to maybe talk about some things we haven't really
there's
thought about.
There's a whole bunch we can do with this, but again, if I'm riding down the waterway, I love a floating dock.
Yeah.
I love a floating dock because what that tells me is there's likely water there at all tides.
Yeah.
Probably, not all the docks, but that's a good indicator. And that's another piece of structure that's hanging out there that's just suspended.
Yeah.
And they can get up under.
For sure.
I really like that. So yeah, floating docks. I like wood docks.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing I look for is I look for growth on that dock.
Yeah.
And what I mean by growth is any kind of your crustaceans, your shellfish, algae, things that are getting up on that structure and hanging out.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that for sure. One thing I've noticed is just a random thought is I do feel like sometimes those docks that have, I don't know if you've seen this, but the cross members, the cable cross members that just add some more to it. It seems like fish like that. I don't know, just a little more security. And you were talking about a floating dock, something that fish can get under. There's a spot up at, I'm going to be very broad here, Topsail, a dock at Topsail that has one of those floating mats on it that you can kind of crawl around on. And dude, the fish were every winter. The people just leave the thing in the water. And if you drive around all of Topsail and find this mat, go fish it.
Congratulations!
Congratulations. But they love getting under it, man. You can see them just barely on the edge of it sometimes. But they don't want to leave that thing. It's so hard to skip a bait up underneath there. But you got to kind of. I got to the point where I was pitching it up on top of the mat and slowly dragging it off and letting it fall right beside the mat, and they'd eat it like that. But
Yeah, we call that the natural approach.
The natural approach, yeah.
Yeah, just how it comes down.
Exactly. That's where mud minnows come from.
There you go.
Well, cool. Is there, do you have a preference on depth of a dock or amount of water that you want to see throughout like a tide cycle?
You know, actually, depending on what part of the tide we're in, I'm fishing a different part of the dock.
Okay.
And I think that's something that that I maybe in my head I think is unique that I do. But I tell you what, at a higher tide, another thing I look for is I look for grass lines behind docks.
Okay.
I don't look for hard beach. I don't look for sand. Either I'm looking for oyster bars or grass. I love the grass that touches up next to the dock.
Yeah.
I think that's just another added, structure piece that they can get into and play around in and feed in and feel safe.
For sure.
So at a higher tide, I'll actually fish towards that grass line.
Like even the base of the dock, if you will.
Yeah, and what I call it is I actually call it the corner, where the grass line meets the dock, and it's usually the walking part of the dock and not the gazebo part, if you will.
Yeah.
I call that the corner, and I love fishing the corner where the grass meets the dock.
Yeah.
On a higher tide. And as the tide falls out, I tend to fall back with the dock towards even fishing on the outside edge of the dock at a dead low tide or as the tide transitioning. So
sweet. Yeah, that's I can think of a couple spots where that corner of the dock I've had good luck on just and like you said, at a higher tide, it's really kind of transition up and down those docks. One thing I've done before when scouting and looking for some docks, I'm curious if you've done this. I've gotten on, and I can't even recall if this was beneficial or not. But it seems like some of the docks, they're a little deeper at the end, or there might be like some shallow docks, and there's one dock that's got maybe it's been dredged out and there's maybe 2 or 3 more feet of water there. But you can scroll through the years on Google Earth and kind of change the tide in which, like say 2017, it's a low tide picture. 2018 might be a high tide picture. You can see some of those docks that are a little bit deeper at low tide. And I know I spent like 4 or 5 hours one day marking a bunch of docks on Google Earth, and I can't recall if I ended up finding any more productive docks. But have you ever used Google Earth to scout out dock areas?
Absolutely. Another thing I'll actually drop in here is I in addition to that, I have Navionics on my phone.
Oh, sweet.
So I play with Navionics. Between Navionics and Google Earth, that's usually how I do. Like let's say for example, I'm going to go fish down in Ocean Isle, and I don't fish a lot in Ocean Isle. I'll pull up that area on Google Earth and Navionics, and I'll get present information currently what the water's doing down in Ocean Isle, and then I'll get information historically from Google Earth, just like you said. I think that is probably, if you're just sitting around on the couch, that is the best thing you can do to prepare yourself to go fish.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think that's in any kind of fishing, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Inshore, at least.
Definitely. Preparation, and especially now, all the resources that we have, where we can be way more dialed before we ever get on the water. I think it's so important.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about like dock location, meaning what are some of the things that you might look for or trends that you've seen as far as like where a dock might be placed. So like let's talk about like maybe like the mouth of a western creek, or like back in a western creek, or a dock on an island, or a dock on a point, or any of those key factors that play into holding fish at certain times.
Different times of year, I think those fish move around. I love fishing a lot. If I'm just going out looking, I love fishing docks that are inlet adjacent, is what I'll call it.
Yeah.
Docks that are closest to the inlet. When those fish are transitioning at different times of year, I'll fish near those inlets, and I'll fish that structure near the inlets. And I think that's just one of the definitely one of the starting points, I would say. If I was just going to go out there and start dock banging today, I would say that fishing docks near the inlets is a great thing you can do.
Definitely.
Now, just depending on species and different times of year, there's a whole variety of things you can do. I would say, in the wintertime, I look for a little bit deeper water, deeper docks, whether it's in the ICW or in the bays of some of these marinas are holding great fish, and always a good opportunity to try those out. but yeah, I mean, it's just species dependent. If just depending on what time of year and what I'm doing, I'm looking for different things for sure.
For sure. I just had this thought while you were talking about that. Like, I think that one of the cool things about a dock fishing podcast like this is it is something that is, I would say more relatable to everyone all up and down the coast that listens to this podcast. They can take the ideas behind, picking apart a dock, even bass fishing, and apply it to their fishery. Because, you get down into Florida, you got snook that orient on docks, you got baby tarpon that orient on docks.
Absolutely.
And they all are using that structure for the same reason, for cover, for protection, and as an ambush spot for bait. So don't be, if as I always share, it's like even if it didn't relate to your area at all, it still does, because the different tactics and styles of fishing in different places, can be taken. I don't know why I'm struggling so hard to explain this, but can be taken anywhere and applied.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, it's the most versatile. It's on any body of water that you can fish. There's going to be a dock.
Yeah.
If you're putting boats in there's going to be a dock. So
there's been Bassmaster or Bass like Elite Series tournaments and stuff won fishing the boat ramp docks. You know what I mean? So there's something to dock fishing.
Yeah, we Zane and I, Zane Long, we were in Florida. We were peacock bass fishing, and of course, it was a windy day. What did we do? Flip docks.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
We had success, man. It was a great time. So,
heck yeah.
It's literally something you can do anywhere.
It really is. Is there any other? I'm going back to that question I was talking. Hit the mic. Going back to this question that I was talking about before, kind of like dock placement. And I'm thinking, I'm like, as we're talking about this, I'm rolling through my head of like all the docks that I fished throughout the year, and and trying to like piece it together. And sometimes it makes total sense, like while there's fish in the back corner of this marina, or the dock on the point. But other times it's just like a random dock that they show up on.
Sure.
But are there any other key factors or points of like why choose this dock?
Let's see.
That's a very broad question.
Yeah, no, for sure. But we've talked about water depth. I would say I'm looking for a little bit of current near that dock too.
Yeah.
I like moving water near these docks, and I like seeing bait.
Definitely.
That's definitely a key piece that I think we missed was seeing bait around these docks, or if you're in the marina, seeing bait in that marina, or wherever you're at, you want to see bait. I think that's pretty common with any fishing spot. You'd love to see bait. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say bait's key, for sure. Well, let's talk now about. I guess we did talk a little bit about like where on the dock you're fishing, but take me through kind of like your setup. Like you're rolling up to hit a dock. Like how do you approach it, and how do you power pole, spot lock, drop an anchor? What's the most effective way in your opinion to approach and fish a dock?
It's the most effective way. I fish a flat bottom Carolina skiff, so it's the everyday man's boat doing the everyday man's fishing.
Yeah.
And so having that, you're not the quietest boat, you're not the fastest, you're not the easiest boat to maneuver in the wind either. So,
but you're darn stable.
You're darn sure stable. That's exactly right. And but I do have a power pole, and I would say, if you want to get into this dock thing, a power pole is huge. If you can do it, get two.
Yeah. Changing that angle up a little bit.
Man, that power pole, you can come in and you can essentially, what I really would say, okay, let's say I'm moving into a dock and I see the dock I want to go to. I want to shut off my motor about 50 to 100 yards away from that dock. It's just, you want to be as quiet as possible, because those fish are holding up under there thinking they're completely safe. So I will shut off my motor and I'll move in using a trolling motor. Just on one or two, just to get to where I'm going. And once I got enough speed, I'll actually cut that off and just let the boat carry into. And I'll usually start either in between the dock or on the outside of the docks.
Mm-hmm. In between the dock being kind of like between two docks, like the neighboring dock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So and what that does is it opens up another dock you can fish right behind you too.
For sure.
So don't rule that out. Even though I will say, maybe later on I'll mention that you want to fish on a certain side of a dock. I've caught fish on one side of a dock and not on the other.
Yeah, that's very true.
Which is wild, but
yeah.
Very true. And it's happened a lot. So
even sometimes
so,
specific pilings, like you're getting bites on like one piling. It's crazy.
I think I've pulled. We were fishing one day, and I think one piling held about 4 or 5 nice 18 to 20-inch flounder on it, whereas the guy 2.5 feet down maybe caught one.
Yeah.
So, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane.
It is crazy.
But yeah. So yeah, just when you go into a dock and you want to be courteous because you're also fishing someone's backyard.
Right.
So you want to take care of that spot. So you're moving quiet, take care of those fish, and power pull down or even a mud stick. Big fan of the mud stick. That's how I got started. Use that mud stick and just be as quiet as possible. Don't slam hatches. And once you get in there, you're going to want to hitch your bait up into that dock and just be patient. A lot of people like to move that bait in and out a lot. I let the first one sit there for a very long time and just wait.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's key. How often are you maneuvering around the dock? Like if you don't get a bite, are you fishing through a dock? Are you giving a dock a certain amount of time? Does that depend on if fish are there or if you're like kind of scouting it?
Exactly. Okay. I think that's exactly right, Jud. I will, if I know that I've historically caught fish there at that, it's a very similar condition because again, making notes about what conditions you're catching on fish is very important.
Yeah.
But yeah, historically, if I've known I've caught fish there, I'll give it an extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But I will maneuver around. Fish are going to move from one dock to the other. So if you're in an area with several docks, I would say it's definitely worth moving. Maybe if you're not catching fish within 15 minutes on a dock, you're probably pretty safe to say that they're not going to be eaten at that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
But like you were saying too, like maneuvering around, hitting a slightly different angle, a little bit different part of the dock is key. And those fish, sometimes it seems like they're like keyed into one dock, but other times they'll kind of fade between 3 or 4 docks, 2 or 3 docks. Where I'm catching them on one dock, or all of a sudden you'll have 3 guys' rods go off, and then nothing for like 10 minutes, and then it happens again. It's like they'll kind of transition around back and forth. But man, it's so funny, like how the dude that's throwing it under the white bumper near the corner of the dock is hooking all the fish, and the dude that's 3 feet over to the left, it just shows how much creatures of habit the redfish, trout, and flounder are as they move through structure. Sure. They're traveling the same path. I guess one thing too that we should talk about. What all would you say you're consistently targeting on docks? Is it more than just redfish?
Yeah, I would say redfish is probably, everyone loves catching redfish. Yeah. So I would say redfish is number 1. Number 2 would definitely be flounder, and of course with our fishery the way it is right now, that's kind of been pushed to the wayside, unfortunately, and that's my bread and butter. I love flounder fishing. Yeah, me too. Especially flipping docks for them, and it's very similar to bass fishing. I love doing that. So it's too bad. It's too bad.
Yeah, I would say flipping docks for flounder almost. I never even really thought about that, especially with artificial. Is almost exactly like flipping docks or bass. And it's fun, man. Especially that I have a little skiff, and sometimes when I'm out by myself and I want dinner, I'll just go flip docks for flounder, and just beat on it myself, with the trolling motor, and I can maneuver around and hit all the different little angles. It's really fun. Like it's fun to skip the cast up underneath the dock and. Get that retrieve. And there's truly, a trout thump's good, but like a good flounder thumping on artificial is about as much dopamine as I can have released on a bite from a fish that I can't see at least.
How about the hook set too, man? When they hit, you can just ream into it.
That's what I just like setting the hook and feeling the thump. I don't give a crap about the fight. I don't care anything about getting him over the gunnel. I just want to feel the bite and set the hook.
There you go. I'm with you.
Well, yeah, that's cool. Do you? And I've caught I'm asking this because I haven't really done much targeting of trout on docks. But have you found a pattern for catching trout on docks much?
I haven't dedicated enough time to it, honestly. Yeah. I have caught trout on docks, yes. Yeah. I would say at the right time of year in the marinas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
There's good opportunities to do that. But but it's not steady.
Yeah.
It's usually crowded. So
For sure.
I would say another species that I really like to catch on docks is black drum. And
Yeah,
that's
for
something
sure.
that within the past, I think 2 or 3 years that I've really started to like say, okay, black drum, flounder's closed. Black drum is another great species that we have that's kind of always been pushed to the wayside,
Definitely.
but it's really fun to catch.
Yeah, they
And,
pull hard, they taste delicious, and they can get just as big as
Absolutely.
redfish.
Yep, absolutely.
I think one of the problems with it too is like so often when I'm fishing a dock, I'm pitching a bait fish up underneath it, and
Yeah.
so like having a guy that's going to throw a crab or shrimp or something like that,
So
you
it's
can
funny-
fish a
it's
whole
funny you
dock
say
and not
that.
ever catch the black drum because you never threw the right bait under there.
That's exactly right. And what I will say is that something that I've started to do is I'll bring 2 or 3 dozen fiddler crabs with me.
Nice.
And, I don't know how many times, especially getting into this time of year, May, June, I'll see a very large sheephead on an inshore dock,
Yeah.
that I'll be fishing for redfish. And more times than not, I'll take, even if I just take my, my jig head and put a crab on it, more times than not, I've hooked up on that sheephead that's been hanging out there.
That's awesome.
So that's something I would highly recommend everyone doing is just keep a couple crabs with you.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's important to realize, people just think like shrimp, bait fish, and we can get into like there's tons of different types of bait fish to fish on docks.
Sure.
But, there's so many options for bait to use while cut bait, dead bait, live bait to use inshore here and near shore. But what are some of the ones that you like to use and you find effective and you're confident in? As far as like not artificial goes.
So non-artificial baits that
Non-artificial
I love
baits.
to use, I would say, and I learned this from a guy up in Topsail area. Best bait I like is, and I think this is where Zane got that nickname from. Is I love cut pogies.
Cut
I
pogies.
love a cut pogie. Yeah, there is nothing like that. That centerpiece of a pogie, cut the head, cut the tail off of a fresh pogie, and that is redfish candy.
Yeah.
I tell you what.
So much scent, man. When you cut into those, just
Yep.
the oil and junk that comes out of them. I mean, there's no reason a redfish wouldn't smoke that. Is there any other types of baits that you use? Or are you mostly trying to fit, like always fish cut pogie if you can?
No. I would say, obviously depending on what I'm doing, if I'm fishing flounder, I'll love pulling a finger mullet on the ground.
Yeah.
That I would say a finger mullet over a pogie just tends to be a little hardier, stay alive a little longer.
For sure.
To kind of work it better too. So, finger mullet for the right situation, and if I can't find pogies, I'll grab finger mullet and I'll fish it. I'll fish those live, and I don't cut those for some reason, and fish live finger mullet for redfish and flounder, and I love them both. Just whatever I find that day, whatever's convenient, I'll go with. But if I'm having a tough day, I love a cut pogie.
Yeah, a cut pogie. That confidence and that scent is pretty key. What about for black drum? Is there anything specifically used for black drum?
Crab. And that's something I picked up from the podcast here, man.
Right on.
Just listening to Zane, that you hear about it, and we fished together before you guys did the show, I think.
Right.
But get crab. Absolutely, crab is a way to go for that. You can get away with shrimp the right time of year. But it's got to be fresh.
That time of year is starting to fade hard right now, unfortunately.
It's gone.
Yeah,
it's gone.
It's gone. Oh man, I love when you can fish shrimp, man, because everything will eat it. Every single fish out there. Maybe not a flounder. You can definitely catch flounder and cut shrimp, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite for flounder. And trout. I mean, I guess trout and flounder will both eat dead shrimp, but it's not necessarily always the best. But
if the fish are chewing under that dock or whatever structure you're fishing, shrimp is the number one. You're going to find out whether or not there's a fish under that dock with a piece of shrimp.
Yeah, that's very true, especially fresh shrimp.
Absolutely.
Now, are you like Zane, and I'm trying to take after this, where you're fishing a lot of fresh shrimp, like trying to go and buy actual fresh shrimp from the fish market as opposed to like a cup of shrimp at Intercoastal Angler?
I do, yeah. I stay away from the cup of shrimp. Again, if those fish are really hungry, you'll get away with it in the frozen cup, the hockey puck. But I would say fresh shrimp is absolutely the way to go. And if you can, right time of year, if you can get live, live's going to be even better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just expensive.
I've heard. Tell me if you've heard this too. That maybe it was. We keep shouting out Zane. He's gonna have to give us like $100 or something for this podcast.
He's a great guy.
He's a great dude. What's the tackle shop at Carolina Beach? Why am I forgetting the name of it? Island Tackle. Yeah. Do they have shrimp year round? I've heard they have shrimp year round.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't buy my bait down there. That's a ride for me. So.
Yeah, it's a ride for me too.
Yeah.
But if they've got live shrimp in December and January, then it's worth the ride.
I know One Stop Bait Shop up in Surf City does.
They do. Okay.
Yeah, that's usually, if they're out, it's because there's probably not any shrimp to be had. So
gotcha. Okay, so they're going to try
One Stop Bait Shop. Yep.
Sweet. All right. Any other bait that kind of comes to your mind as far as dock bait goes?
Not as far as live or fresh or dead bait.
Yeah.
Things
So
like
let's
that.
go artificial. Artificial.
Yeah, sure. I would say, I love my Z-Man products. I'm a Z-Man fiend. I love a good, nice, a large diesel minnow. I like the 4 to 5 inch diesel minnows. Those are great under docks, especially if you work them slow and on the bottom. A lot of times if there's not redfish, those flounder are going to pick that up really, really easily. They love a large, fat profile of that diesel minnow. So artificial baits, I love Z-Man. Something, it's usually more at night, but sometimes at night I'll go flip a topwater around the dock. And I know some guys that like to do it during the day. Early in the mornings, late at night, they like to flip a topwater under there and work it underneath the dock. So,
heck yeah. Yeah, I think that structure a lot of times will cause those fish to float or orient a little bit closer to the surface on those docks. They feel a little more comfortable, and so that topwater is just right there in their face. Mm-hmm. Here's a question that I just thought of too, and it can vary for sure, but as far as how current's working through a dock, explain kind of how you like to set up if there is a stronger current pulling through a dock. Do you like to sit above it, below it, out in front of it?
Ideally, I would like to set up on the like facing into the current. I like to cast up current and let that bait come down with the current, especially if I'm fishing. Let's say I'm fishing a finger mullet. I'll definitely want that finger mullet to come down with that bait. Most of the bait's probably moving that way too with that current. So, it's the natural look, and I like to stick with that. But there have been instances where I will fish and let baits kind of drift into the dock. The only problem with that is you're not usually, if there's a lot of current there and it's pretty deep, you're probably not tending bottom unless you have a ton of weight on that thing.
Yeah.
Then you're running into the risk of snags and things like that. So I would say I definitely like to pitch up into the current and let that bait come out. And if it falls out, then you got to recast. But a lot of times it'll stay up in there for several minutes, enough for a fish to come pick it up.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. I think that's a good segue into kind of your rigs that you like to fish under docks.
Absolutely.
And as far as the bait goes, like, are you a classic Carolina rig? Is there anything different you do?
I like a short Carolina rig.
Okay.
Again, something from the old timers up in Surf City. I love a short Carolina rig, but I still use a circle hook if I'm fishing for redfish.
Yeah.
One, it takes care of the fish, amazing. Two, for maybe some of your novice fishermen, it helps with that hook set. You don't have to worry about that hook coming unpinned while you're fighting that fish.
For sure.
So I'll use a short Carolina rig. Another thing I really, really like is a knocker rig. And First Flight they're starting to make some new. They had circle hooks on a knocker rig that I've seen recently.
Oh, cool.
And that is, that's a very cool product. That's a very good idea. But yeah, I love a knocker rig. It allows for a much more accurate cast.
Definitely. So when you're saying short Carolina rig, explain your setup a little bit. So are you going?
Okay. For the sake of ease, what I'll do is I use swivel. I know a lot of guys like to tie on, but I can make 20 rigs before I go out in the morning and have those ready all day, because you are going to get broken off. If you're fighting good sized redfish, you're going to get broke off.
Yeah. God, so painful.
So it hurts. It hurts. So I'll go swivel, and then I'll go maybe about a 5-inch piece down to a bead, and let a weight slide in between that bead and that swivel. and then I'll probably go another 4 or 5 inches down to a circle hook.
Okay, cool.
So you're looking about from the bottom of the bead to the weight about 5 inches, and that's about as long as I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem, especially under docks, there's already so much structure, probably stuff that's been dropped off the dock. Like a lead weight sitting close to the bait is the last of my worries as well when it comes to those fish eating.
Yeah.
So
I think what I've seen is that at different times of year, so if that water clarity, like we have in the winter, I think a leader is necessary. So I'll go a little bit longer in the winter to keep that weight away from the bait.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's a great point.
What was I about to say? Oh, how much weight do you like to fish typically? I know it is going to vary big time depending on what you're fishing, but
for sure.
Is there a standard weight if you're fishing just like a kind of medium current dock that you like to go with?
Yeah, I think the weight that I probably grab the most of is a half ounce. Half ounce egg weight.
Same here.
Yep.
Same here.
Yep.
Well, cool. Do you ever find yourself fishing? This is something I grew up doing as a kid a lot, and I haven't really done it guiding much, but it used to be so effective. And we would, go casting a bunch of mullet and then rig them on a jig head through the lips, alive, and fish them. Even when they die, you keep fishing them. But pitching those up underneath the dock and kind of hopping a jig head out with a mullet rigged onto the jig head. Do you do much of that? Or have you played around with that?
I've gotten away from it, but yeah, that's the easy way to do it. I mean, that's a great effective way of making sure that your bait is tendon bottom. Because then if you're fishing for flounder, if you're fishing a long Carolina rig. I think a lot of mistakes that are made are you're fishing a 2-foot leader and that bait is 2 feet off the ground. That flounder's not as enticed to come get it.
Right.
But man, like you said, with the jig head, you're tendon bottom the whole time. So
right.
That's I think that's a great way to do it. Absolutely.
I want to do some more of that again this summer. But that's a fun way to flounder fish. And,
oh yeah.
Just pitching those jig heads up in there. It's a good way to kind of power fish docks too, and to figure out. If it's a spot worth sitting up on, like kind of pitching those mullet and working your way around the dock and going to the next dock. You can do the same with the Carolina rig. But then other nice thing, what you're saying with like a knocker rig is sometimes you get a long leader on a Carolina rig and you're trying to get it up in a little corner or a little pocket or something in the dock, and it's like something ends up catching or hitting or hanging. And so fishing a little tight knocker rig is definitely a good way to punch it up in there.
Absolutely.
Well, sweet. Well, let's talk a little bit. I know we talked about this pre-show, but what are some other pieces of inshore structure that you prefer to fish? If you're not necessarily on a dock, what's some other stuff that people can kind of key in on and target?
We have several bridges in the area. Bridges are a great opportunity for a variety of species. I love fishing the bridges. Let's see. I look for any kind of rock wall. A lot of people will make an artificial rock wall along their beach per se. That's structure. That's going to be holding little crabs and little bait fish.
Yeah.
I will absolutely hit a drift. I love drifting for flounder, by the way. That's another thing I love to do. But I would say I would absolutely let a bait go along that rock edge. A lot of times you'll pick up black drum that are hanging out there. Redfish, flounder even. So, rock walls, bridges, any kind of hard structure is what I'll call it. Anything inshore hard structure, I love queuing in on.
Yeah, hard structure. Let's talk a little bit about bridge fishing and targeting bridges for redfish and flounder and whatnot.
Sure.
I know we only have a couple of bridges here, but how do you like to set up on a bridge and how do you like to kind of go about targeting redfish on them?
Again, so I like to, for redfish, I like to position down current.
Down current, okay.
And again, cast into that current and let that bait work down. And try to stay parallel to the structure that I'm fishing. So if there's a set of pylons on my left, I'm going to try to pitch as close to those pylons as possible, but to make it to where that bait is coming back to me in that drift set. So
Sweet.
Yeah.
Fishing. I grew up fishing bridges quite a bit, like up there at Topsail. I used to go fish that old swing bridge and fishing down there.
That was a spot right there.
That was a good spot.
That was a spot.
And just those large pieces of structure, man, it's just cool how all of our inshore fish will hang out on them and orient in different ways and kind of sit in different ways. But you got to kind of know how to. There's so much snaggy stuff in those big, deep current areas, but In return, that means fish habitat and understanding how to fish them properly and get your bait where it needs to be is always, it separates, are you going to just get frustrated and break a bunch of stuff off, or are you going to catch some fish? So,
sure.
But yeah, I like
fishing.
Fishing
vertically. Fishing vertically is great too, on bridges.
Yeah,
if you've got enough depth, fishing vertically is not a bad choice either. And that kind of helps with the snags a little bit. You can kind of control that a little bit better.
For sure. So, what would you say in a boat? Because I know it's different in a kayak, but in a boat, how much depth do you think you need to effectively fish vertically for redfish? Trout or flounder, are a little different, but like redfish, sheep's head, black drum.
I like round number. I like 10.
10 feet of water, yeah.
10 in that area. I'll go shallower. Again, if I've caught fish there when the water's been a little higher, I'll give it a go.
Yeah,
I'm not afraid to. I think a lot of times we get set. Oh, those fish are only going to bite on high tide in that spot. And then if you don't go back or they're only going to bite in this water depth, you kind of get set in your ways.
Right.
You got to be flexible. Those fish are still there. So,
definitely.
Yeah, I would say 10 is probably my round number to fish vertically. I love deeper though. Deeper's great.
Definitely. So. Yeah, you're out in the ocean and you think 30 feet of water, it sounds so deep. And I had someone say it one time. It's like, think about your boat, it's 22, 23 feet long. So that's really only just a couple feet longer than this boat. It's not that far away. 30, 40 feet sounds so deep, but it's really not deep at all. Those fish can see the boat plain as day up there, which is the funny thing.
For sure.
Yep. That really kind of blew my mind when I started thinking about it like that, because 40 feet sounded so deep, but being quiet.
It's just double your boat, just double your boat.
Exactly.
So that's crazy. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, being quiet and like not cranking the motor, or even like live well running, like it could affect the fish. It might not, or it might, So those are all things to think about for sure. I'm trying to think if we missed anything else about dock fishing here. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you'd want to share?
I would say, two things that I did make a note of.
Okay.
I would say being courteous to other fishermen on docks is a huge thing, especially in this area. We do have those community docks like you had mentioned before. And I think just as a little note, if you see someone fishing on it, give them their space. You'll get your opportunity. And a lot of times, a lot of guys are real friendly. If you're being stealthy and you're doing those things that, to take care of those fish and not really, beat up on them too bad. Just like you guys that are fishing the big schools in the flats, you guys take care of your fish out there and try not to beat them up too bad. It's the same thing on the docks. And, us dock guys like to take care of our fish. So
100%.
Yeah.
It's, I think that's so important. What would you say the unspoken rule is? Like, if you see someone else on the dock, do you roll up there, or as soon as you get up there, you turn around and say, let's come back and check this later? I know that can probably depend on who it is and where it is.
Yeah, it does. I was trying to say, if it's Kevin or Zane or somebody like that, I'm coming.
Yeah,
I'm coming in there. We'll tie the boats together and we'll do that. But no, if you're not familiar with that person, I would give them their space. I would say I like to go 2 docks down. That's usually what I'll do. Or if it's a crowded day, if it's a busy day, I'll fish the next dock down, but I'll stay away. I'll go on the opposite side. Just give them your space. Give them their space. You'll have an opportunity to fish that dock.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's important. And it's like you said, people are usually pretty friendly about it, but always spreading out. And a lot of times when I find fish that I didn't know were in an area, even in the creeks and whatnot, it's when there's somebody in my first, second, and third spot I wanted to go check, and I'm like, well, crap. Now I've just got to BS my way through this morning and go check some stuff I haven't checked in a while and act like it's going to be really good. And then I'm like, well, dang, there was a bunch of fish in here I didn't know about. So don't just – I feel like some people just give up when there's someone or their A or B plan doesn't pan out, but use that as a time to just explore and check out some new stuff, and don't get so sucked into like, oh, I want to keep going back and checking this dock to see if that boat's going. Like, go check some new stuff. That is what's going to make you a better angler in the long run is being versatile and having a lot of stuff in your back pocket there to go check out.
You're absolutely right, man. I have a golden rule. If I go and hit a dock that I know is holding fish, I have to go try something new that day.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of times it's paid out. But I do make it a point every day I go out, I'll go try something and maybe get skunked. But you got to do it. You got to do it.
You got to do it, and that's something I try hard to do. It gets tough in the summer when I'm rolling and working a bunch, but try to always look at something. It doesn't have to necessarily be brand new, but something that I haven't fished in a while. But it's so easy to get in this stale pattern of like hitting the same crap every single time. And then all of a sudden it dries up and you're like, oh shoot, I have not been doing my leg work and I got nothing for tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. That's kind of how I'm feeling about my trip tomorrow. So I hope that person's not listening to this podcast, but
you got it, man. You got it.
I'm
you got options.
well, I'm down in the river tomorrow and I've not been down there much lately. So
okay.
We'll see what happens. But hopefully it'll pan out. We'll see what happens. It should.
There you go.
I'm excited. I'm very excited for this trip because I haven't fished down there at all lately, and so that's just exciting to me to go fishing. I haven't fished. It becomes what I fish. From downtown to Oak Island, I fish all that a lot in the summer. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'll probably get my butt kicked, but it humbled me and make me a better person.
There you go, man.
You said you had 2 things written down. Was there one more that you wanted to share? If not, no worries at all.
What was the other thing? I think we touched on it already, man.
Okay,
I think
cool.
we're good.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Well,
sure.
Sweet. Well, man, we're at 45 minutes. I think that's good, and there's some great information there. And, like we said, it's a full year-round fishery, wintertime, summertime, springtime. So get out there and bang some docks is all I got to say.
Yes, sir.
We're also, you guys, we're going to hop over on Patreon and do a little bit of extra recording for our Patreon guests or Patreon members over there. So if you do like the podcast and want to help support the show, you can do a little $5 donation a month over on Patreon. It helps out a bunch. It pays for everything. It lets me make a little money off this, and nothing much at all, but it's super, super appreciated. And I do thank you, everyone on Patreon that's helping support. But we're going to slide over there. We're going to talk a little bit more. Pierre, thank you so much for doing the podcast.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And tell people real quick, I've got it all linked on here, but tell people where they can find your guide business.
So this is my first year. I am full disclosure, first year. Rising Sun Fishing, rising.sun.fishing. You can find me on all the social medias and then rising-sun-fishing.com.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, man, thanks again. And everyone that listened to this podcast, thank y'all so much, and we will see you next week. Later.